OMG, it's the POK at HTAP. This is what a young person would say if this was their podcast. Unfortunately, it's mine, and I'm very old. I'm Toby Hadoke, I'm watching Doctor Who, I'm accentuating the positive, and I'm seeing if I can guess my guests' favourite things about their chosen story.
Hello, my name is Ian Winterton. I'm a playwright and writer and journalist, and I am picking The Power of Kroll from 1978.
Well, welcome back. Previously on Happy Times and Places, I was in neither. I'm having a rotten day, but I'm not going to be... This isn't a are you okay, hun thing. I just have to be honest with you, see where I'm coming from. And I seem to recall I was doing the same in the previous Happy Times and Places for The Curse of Peladon. I don't know. I'm sorry, but there we go. Because I think sometimes it's important to point out that although I accentuate the positive and want to celebrate Doctor in these podcasts, that I'm not a natural ray of sunshine. Do you know what I mean? Because I think we hate happy clappy people more than we hate miserable people. Don't worry, I'm hugely miserable. I just try not to inflict it on anybody else. But I think it was important context to explain. I was supposed to be doing. I'd actually got a few new series ones lined up, but the older series, Classic Who, is more. The facts are more comfortably lodged in my brain for starters, but also it is a bit more of a comfort blanket. So I'd not intended to do The Curse of Peladon, which I did last time, not a particular favourite story of mine, adored. I certainly hadn't intended to do The Power of Kroll, but the beauty of Doctor Who is whatever mood you're in, there's a Doctor Who story to suit your mood. And for some reason, I decided what I wanted to watch today was The Power of Kroll, and fortunately in my bank that I've got of several very kind people who've been very patient, who are probably hoping that they will live to see the day that their Happy Times and Places is released, amongst them Ian, who I don't actually really know, but expressed an interest in the podcast, has done loads of interesting work that is well worth you checking out, and wanted to talk about The Power of Kroll. So what the hell? And that's what I'm going to do now on this gloomy afternoon, where I'm beset with a tax bill, a washing machine, and a two-pronged attack of rejection. Ha ha ha! So it's all going to be cured by The Power of Kroll. So the tax bill, the washing machine's made a one-man whip. And The Power of Kroll is going to make the same man sing. I must now stop doing the Huey Lewis thing. Right. Episode 2 of The Power of Kroll. I've got it, I think, about to kick off on the old BritBox in 3, 2, 1. Sorry, yes. You don't need to know. Did you hear Alexa then? That was just Alexa telling me that she was playing from Sausage Magoo, which is what we call... you don't need to know the pet names we have. There's a room over there called Tim, because we didn't want to call it the back room because there was going to be an extension, so it wouldn't have been at the back anymore. So she said, what's a good name? What's another name? And I said Tim, and it sort of stuck. We even had the builders going, we've left the ladders in Tim. So I'm quite chuffed about that. Anyway, so here we have the green swampies, and of course... I did actually get a letter from John Abineri. I'd mostly written to him about Fury from the Deep because that was missing, and so therefore the best one. But he said the most hilarious shoot was as King of the Swampies. And of course there's, all those stories of them having to go to a nearby RAF base, American RAF base, and scrub off. Which sounds really painful. Scrub it. I'm not. Would you be? No, because I still know fairly awful stories about. There's so much sort of safety and care taken of actors in various circumstances. But when it comes to getting makeup and masks and things off quickly, it's all pull it off. And oh gosh, it's not always like that. But I have quite sensitive skin, and people have always been very, very nice and always asked. But it's not unusual to see actors with half of their face been torn off, and I suspect that green stuff was. But it's a good look. I mean, it shouldn't quite work. Little green men is a cliche, isn't it? So green, the colour for monsters is green, but the colour for humanoid monsters is not. You'd expect a bit, a bit of latex or a bit of scaling or something to give the. No, these are people who've got green skin, and I actually think it kind of works. And here we have a joke. The cliffhanger was a gag. It's a man in a terrible monster costume, and you go, well, we've seen plenty of those in Doctor Who. No, Scart is basically. He looked more convincing from the front. But then that ties into that. So do monsters in Doctor Who, in the Doctor Who universe, look like men in terrible costumes? Because Romana was fooled by the Scart's. I was the definitive Kroll, but of course, so it's a good gag of going. Well, a Doctor Who cliffhanger is usually the companion being threatened by a man in a ropey costume, and the resolution is actually this time it turns out to be a man in a ropey costume. I like that. They hung about on that reaction shot of the Doctor and Romana quite a long time, didn't they? And here's this now. I think this is all quite, in another universe. This is like the bit in Earthshock in episode 1, which I think is cracking, when you've got Steve Morley as Walters just looking at lights going out and going, this is terrifying, which is sort of very Alien and Aliens, isn't it? People's signals vanishing or people being picked off in the dark, and this is there's something going on the screens. We can't see what it is, but the signals are suggesting it's something gigantic. And this is great writing. This is these. You turn the lights down a little bit, beads of sweat here. This is somebody seeing something that is not only perplexing, but if what they're being told is correct, this is terrifying. It doesn't quite come across like that in the episode, and we will examine why. I love all this stuff at night. This is very convincing, and the actors are doing a nice job. And of course, this is nice for Rome Dutt, because in terms of action script, although he's just done what I call an Aidan nearly. Aidan is the guy in the Keys of Marinus who gives himself away by going, but that wasn't what the plan was. The plan was to do this. And everyone's, duh. Doesn't one of the monoids do it as well? He goes, I don't think that'll be a problem. What? No, nothing. And he's just done but that wasn't the plan. Oh, hang on. I mean, what's that over there? Is it a spaceship? So he needed to do that so that we were tipped off that he is up to no good. Now, I think you could have been slightly less on the nose, but it's a nice a nice sort of character dynamic that you've got this shifty character who he's not quite right because he's a gun runner for starters, and also because I like the way that Carl Rigg, who I think is excellent throughout this as Valak, sort of, he's really holding his stare there, and he's constantly sort of reminding Rome Dutt, we're not thick, but I buy this shiftiness from Rome Dutt going, yeah, but I'm just the guy that brings you the weapons. I don't expect to fight, which is reasonable, but actually that's not the reason he doesn't want to be there. The reason he doesn't want to be there is because he's double-crossed them. So that's great. So he's in a spot now, and I like that sort of double-crossedness, double-crosser being double-crossed, or it's actually circumstance that's double-crossed him, really. So everyone's working to their own. Nobody's very nice in Robert Holmes scripts. I hope Robert Holmes. I don't think anybody that. I was going to say I don't think anybody that funny can be not very nice. I know a lot of people who are funny who actually aren't very nice. So that's not necessarily true. But I think Holmes's humour is so based in the. He treats the people's flaws so even-handedly. I think he's too forgiving or too amused by our shortcomings to have been nasty. And I get the impression he was a hugely intelligent, witty sort of fellow. Would have loved to have had the pleasure. I think I don't know why when he was alive we didn't kind of distill everything we knew about him. We gave a few interviews, but not nearly so many as would have been handy to have come from a person that I think of the classic series understood Doctor Who better than anybody in terms of as just how to do the nuts and bolts of making a Doctor Who script sing. Even when it's a story that, and no, the Power of Kroll's not ever going to be anybody's favourite story. But and I think we sometimes lazily go, oh, that's because Robert Holmes wasn't having a good day. Really? I don't know. I don't know that there's not enough in this that. Sorry, Norman Stewart with a who I don't think does a particularly awful, universally awful job either. As I say, sometimes the alchemy just doesn't happen. But I think what Robert Holmes has provided, could have produced an awful lot. Now I know, and I think don't they in the discontinuity guide when John Leeson has the line, it hasn't moved for 15 minutes. They say they could be talking about the plot. This isn't plot, but this is tension, which is perfectly acceptable in Doctor Who. There's an whole episode of Earthshock that is just tension, and I wouldn't change it for the world because it's well done. Drama isn't necessarily just about plots unfolding. It is an exercise in atmosphere as well as action, taste, character development, storytelling. But this is great. They're looking at their instruments and going, we can't understand what's going on here. But whatever if these instruments aren't broken, there's something really big. But and Madoc, if everyone was doing what Philip Madoc's doing, these scenes would be rich with tension. And John Leeson, of course, is playing. Now, see, John Leeson there has a line saying, "If he's got friends out there, we're in trouble." It's gonna be awful. I love John Leeson. I love K9. I think John Leeson is a witty, genial man. He's lovely to talk to. I think the character he invests K9 with helps to make K9 something very special. I think he's terrible in this. I think he delivers every line, which should be sweaty, tense. Oh my God, if your friend's done that, we're in trouble. As though it's the sort of trouble that happens if you haven't got enough paper doilies for the village fete. It's like it's as if the biggest level of tension that is ever going to occur here is the slight misplacement of an itinerary. Now, it was originally, and the Sons of Earth. This is they're being set up as characters, off stage. They've been mentioned a few times, but they're working away behind the scenes to give people reasons to do or not to do things. That's the way that the camera closes in there on Neil McCarthy as he takes the gun and goes off. And Neil McCarthy doesn't do anything wrong. Atrociously writ. It's the holy writ. It's a holy writ. It's atrociously writ is a terrific line that I love from morning, noon to night. Sucker marks, yeah. So, and this is because it's not just that there's a big monster. It's that the big monster is easily dismissed within the story as a myth because it's in this big old book. And actually, we've seen the big old monster, and it turns out it's a priest carrying on that myth. And this story has a lot to say about religious manipulation. But just in the storytelling of telling the monster story, the monster is a myth. this giant monster. And it's had 3 manifestations. I like the momentum of that. You just go, oh, it pops up every now and again in the centuries. But then that goes to the science. Oh, yeah, if something's massive, it needs to sleep for a couple of hundred years. Okay, I like that. That makes sense within this world and the science or whatever. And due for his... and something about it being, a 4th manifestation, as I say, that momentum, that tying it in with ancient myth, an ancient myth being fulfilled, even though we know ancient myth is kind of bunkum, but it gives it a bit more momentousness because of the momentum, because of the inherited, because of its tying in with the past, and because it's debunking of the religious aspect of it, but also our poo-pooing in our rational world that there's a giant squid god. Well, there is just a giant squid, and the reason we haven't seen it is because it's been asleep, but actually there's enough going on now that might wake it up again. So I think all of that plotting and the way it ties in with the swampier's religion, and of course the production of the methane, which is what keeps the plant going, I think that is all really, really neatly pieced together in the jigsaw of the power of Kroll. And of course we haven't discussed how the story being about methane production is basically, it's a story about fart harvesting, which I say for no other reason. I'm not really a fart joke kind of guy, but there we go. So there's Terry Walsh fulfilling his contractual obligation. I would have expected a slightly better stunt than that, I have to say, because he sort of just falls slightly out of shot. I wanted to see Terry Walsh being pulled under the... Kudos to John Abineri and Carl Rigg there. John Abineri throws himself gallantly into the I'm a religious idiot worshipping a giant squid painted green. I've got an Emmy nomination, what the hell am I doing? And Carl Rigg / Varlic does the brilliant thing of Varlic saves Ranquin and goes, never mind worshipping the squid god. I really like Varlic as a character, and I really like the way Carl Rigg plays him. Never mind your squid god, mate. That bloke with a hat's double-crossed us, and that's a nice... that's a nice twist that the guns are... I'm sure in the book it's that the guns are deliberately doctored in order to kill the swampies, whereas here I think they just go, oh, they're a bit corroded and a bit knackered. Or it could be that I misinterpreted the book when I was younger, and last time I watched it was like, oh, it's not as obvious, it's not as contrived malfeasance as that. It's just that they're substandard guns rather than that they're deliberately sabotaged. Look at Madoc, dripping with ominousness and menace. But that's why it's quite nice when later, Thorne comes up with the idea, doesn't he, of killing them all. And Fenner, even though he's going, they're savages, and who cares? We've got to do. I'm all about the progress. When he's like, I think we'll just. When Thorne's like, I'm going to kill them all. Fenner's like, oh, hang on, which is surprising. But it makes sense. Anyone can suddenly go, oh, hang on, we're going too far. And Madoc's such a convincing character that I buy it. But at least it means they're not all, they're not all just let's just wipe out the swampies because we're cardboard sort of racists, as it were. See, again, he can just make the word no speak volumes. Poor old Graham Mallard here, who has a very 70s haircut. He's actually quite sexy in Colditz, where he's playing a German officer in a leather jacket and slick back hair. And I was quite surprised to see him in that, looking quite as handsome as he is, because he looks a bit like a clown in this, because he's got 70s hair is not. And I say that as somebody that for these videos, for these things, I don't do anything with my hair, and it's a bit wild because I'm clinging on to what's left on top. But 70s hair doesn't do many people many favours, especially not in a sort of workplace. Do you know what I mean? That's all very well in a green room or in Carnaby Street or whatever, but you're in a refinery. That perm could get caught in the machinery. So I was quite surprised when I saw him in Colditz, and he immediately looked like a better actor, because I feel a bit sorry for him. He's one we've never quite tried. Well, I sort of vaguely know where he is, I think, but nobody's ever interviewed him. We've always really struggled to get people for the Power of Kroll. I mean, there's no making of on the DVD, is there? And I think they did try, and they basically went, "Shall we just interview Philip Madoc?" Because because we've got Mary and John Leeson on the commentary. Because McCarthy's dead, John Abernethy had died, Glyn Owen's dead, Frank Jarvis is dead. Now, you see, I just got all Dad's Army then, didn't I? He's dead. The only thing, I love all of this stuff, but what's slightly spoilt it is that they're going, oh my God, there's this giant squid. Is we know because they're not telling us anything we don't already know. Which is a shame because you sort of almost wished he'd been able to contrive it by going, what's this giant squid-shaped thing? Oh my God, is the myth of Kroll a reality? And then we see the squid as it is. We've seen Kroll, and now they're seeing a computer readout of Kroll and going, yes, that's the thing you've already seen. But I like the fact that, it's the refinery raising the lake temperature and the noise and all of that, which has roused Kroll, and I love all of this stuff. That these actors I think that's just really funny. That's a great sort of, big me up. And I think John Avenue is just really funny the way he goes. And he does all those brilliant hand movements, which are such terrible cliches, but he's doing them on purpose, knowing that they're cliches. And you'll wish that you've died on the stone of blood. That's almost now he doesn't mean the stones of blood. I love these hand movements that he does. They're very funny. It's deliberately funny, but he's not winking at the audience. He knows, and we know that he knows, but to all intents and purposes, he's doing a perfectly proper job. But this stuff's all a bit touchy. Two good actors stuck against a very tatty wall, and Madoc's just gone, I'm just gonna behave as if I've got wind. It's a story. It's the methane. I've got trapped wind, so I'm furious. But yeah, Scart says you wish you died on the Stone of Blood. Now the Stone of Blood is obviously the place in the temple, but it's also the Stones of Blood is the title of one of the earlier stories of the season. So is that the only time somebody's referred to something in a story that could also refer to a previous Doctor? Not anyone. You wish you had died in the Inferno. Do you mean the nightclub or the drilling operation? Either. You wish you'd been scratched by a talon of Weng Chiang. This is the line. He's going to get us all killed. Oh dear. I mean, and that would be hugely inconvenient. The vicar would be... I mean, imagine if he got us all killed when the vicar was coming round for tea and the Women Institute had already booked the marquee. I mean, it really needs... I mean, Martin Jarvis, I think, would have probably underplayed it and probably wouldn't have done the dramatic reading of that line, but I think it still would have had the weight and the gravitas that I'm afraid lovely John Leeson does not have, and in fact undermines with his rather too literal reading of the lines. I love the way that Varlick is with Rom Dutt here, and this smacks in the face. Oh, the swampies are idiots. Varlick is who's crucially him and Scart survive, don't they? But Varlick, is a sign that. These people have survived for a reason. They're not daft. And actually, you can worship a giant squid and be capable of reason and understanding characters and motives and all of that sort of thing. And it's, I think it's better than we might actually give it credit for. And Carl Rigg also does contract some of the language as well, which I think suggests... again, because they could be sort of staccato, monosyllabic, cod savages, which would be embarrassing and bad. And John Abernethy, of course, has he's doing all the liturgical stuff, so he speaks in a certain formal sort of priestly way, which works for, for the tribesperson thing and for the religious thing, whereas Carl Rigger's Varlic is a bit more modern, and I think he's got a sort of steely mistrust about him that I really like. John Avenary, but he's also got a bit of he has a bit of a rapport with Rome Dutt. It's like Varlic was the one that Rome Dutt hung around with. I also a credit to Mary Tam's costume. I think that's absolutely fabulous, and I love all the stuff about the 7 holy rituals, and that's only 3. So many lovely lines in this, actually. And of course, yes, because the Doctor and Romana are behind as well, because they still haven't. I suppose it's important that the plot has a slight problem here, because it's important that the Swampies have seen Kroll, in order that they're ahead of everybody, because they've seen Kroll, but the Doctor hasn't, Romana hasn't. The guys in the the guys in the refinery have now, but it just means the placement, the big reveal, which would be amazing, isn't as much of a big reveal, because for the plot we've had to already have had the big reveal. So it's just I don't know how he could have resolved it. I don't think he could have done. But I think it's a shame. But I do absolutely love that whole sequence, and I used to watch it over and over again, actually, when I first got it on video. I loved the closing moments of this episode where there's just something very Doctor Who-y to me. I mean, gosh, John Abenary, having done Last of the Mohicans, he's also doing a story where there's some noise in a pipeline, and something thumping noise in a pipeline, and something emerges from the water to suck people in, which, seeing as he was in Fury from the Deep, he must have just spent the whole of the Power of Kroll having a bit of deja vu. I wonder if he ever woke up all green as well. So look, I love that. Oh, there's something in the pipe. I'm having a listen. What is that noise? And then the bursting of it's very Doctor Who-y to me, even though it's not a thing that happens massively often in Doctor Who. I do like a tentacle. I do like, and I associate tentacles with Doctor Who, and a good tentacle, and that's a pretty good tentacle. It may not be the best tentacle. There's a pretty good one in Seeds of Doom, isn't there? I think it's better than the spearhead tentacles. Shall we have a tentacle lead table? Send in your tables of the best and worst tentacles of Doctor Who. There's one in Nightmare of Eden, isn't there? The one that the Doctor bites. But I like the tentacle bursting from the pipe and pulling Harg in. I think that's a great cliffhanger, and of course it ups the Kroll is not only on the move, he's now, he can now pop up anywhere. So what's my favourite thing about episode 2, though? I think it could be that cliffhanger, which I really like. It could be, the Swampies, and I've already picked an actor, but I do love John Abenary, and I do love Carl Rigg, and actually, the fact that Scart, the sort of least important of the Swampies, is played by Frank Jarvis, who is another of those very recognisable character actors. I remember a friend of mine had watched The Knowledge, and there's a scene with Frank Jarvis, Nick Stringer, and one other. I can't remember who it was now, and my mate said, "Oh, and those 3 blokes in that scene, they're just those 3 blokes that were in everything, weren't they?" And I was like, "Yeah, you've recognised." There's a Nick Stringer, never did a Doctor Who, but he's another of those great sort of regular faces. I was very pleased when he became a regular in the bill. Frank Jarvis, I saw him crop up in a Juliet Bravo the other day, where he had about 3 lines, but then in other stuff he's a solid guest leader, and he's in The Italian Job as well, and he got an obit in The Guardian, actually, so well done. I think Gavin Gorn wrote that. Well done for getting him that, because I've just struggled to get to get 2 in for people who I would say had better claims, really, but it's a crowded market now. And Frank Jarvis, of course, Doctor Who fans, he's the captain in the War Machines, which I have already done, and he's got a bucket on his head in Underworld. So he has had quite an interesting Doctor Who career. So again, he's one of those names that was bouncing about on screens and in print in my youth, and he was even in Catterick, wasn't he? The Vic and Bob thing. So yeah, really interesting career. But Gary Russell told me an interesting story about Frank Jarvis, but it's Gary's to tell, not mine. Anyway, what's my favourite thing about episode 2? I think the much maligned Kroll model is very good as well. I think the problem with Kroll is that, you know, what has been chronicled is that Martin Patmore, the cameraman, was given the wrong advice, and he masked off the camera, so then they had no choice but to have that sort of line on the horizon. But it's actually not as bad as you think. If you did it now, you'd have different levels, you know, so that it would not be, you know, the horizon was just this sort of cut flat line. But I remember reading about how bad it was, and then seeing it and going, well, no, I can sort of see what they've done there. There are worse effects in Doctor Who, and actually the Kroll model, I think, is absolutely superb. But I think for episode 2, I will choose the cliffhanger. And I've got Rankin and Kroll in my back pocket because I may need them later. But let's see what Ian has chosen
for episode 2. It's got to be the fact that we just see Kroll on the horizon. It looks not like the best special effects right now, but 6-year-old me was absolutely enthralled and terrified, and it's and in a weird way, I still think it stands up for the, you know, Kroll looks pretty good. Just the maybe it's the absolute straight line of the horizon that lets it down a little bit. But yeah, Kroll, I can just remember it so clearly.
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty much exactly what I said, and then I chose something else. It's one of those days. Yeah, it is. Damn, because I was expecting to... I don't know why I thought he might choose that latest thing, as that was the first time we saw Kroll. It is a really, really good model. I still think the best thing about that is the way that John Abernethy throws himself on the ground in front of it, though. and then Varlick grabs him and goes, Stop worshipping the squid. We've got things to do. It's funny because I think when I was young, the first time I saw this, I wasn't that interested in the Swampies. I thought they were quite boring. It was only when I got the joke that I liked them a bit more. Anyway, Kroll is a perfectly good choice, and it is not what I chose. So, surprise, surprise, I'm not doing very well in my choice of things. But you know, that's to be expected because the odds are hugely against me. But actually, the odds are hugely against a Doctor Who fan enjoying the power of Kroll, if you look at its place in the rankings, even in the season that it's in. But I am thoroughly enjoying it. I'm enjoying Ian enjoying it. And I'm hoping that if I do some good today, it's that a power of Kroll doubter will look at it and perhaps look at it with a little bit of affection, because then something unloved and unwanted, and I'm not talking about me here, it's currently how I feel. Yes, in honour of that, something as unloved and unwanted as the power of Kroll, that somebody somewhere sees some value in it. And we'll leave that metaphor there. Goodbye. Well, thank you very bloomin' much for listening to Happy Times and Places, which is presented by me, Toby Hadoke. My special guest this time around is Ian Winterton, who can be found on Twitter at Ian Winterton, and his website is ianwinterton.co.uk. He's made both of those things very easy. Thanks to the many patrons who make these podcasts possible, and they include John McClay, Ross McPhillips, Stuart Mitchell, Nathan Moore, Matthew Newton, Dave Owen, Melvin Pena, Keith Pirry, Jonathan Potter, Kevin Parker, Richie, I don't know your surname, Richie, you can give me it if you'd like, Dylan Rees, John Rivers, Jim Sangster, Matt Sawyer, Keith Say, Stephen Smith, Len Stewart, Neil Tate, Nick Temple, Sabrina Tirabassi, Reynard Toombs, David Trainier, and Apollo C. Vermouth. The music for these podcasts is by Dave Gates and the artwork by Dylan Patterson. Well, if you would like to join that list of names, some of which were false names, did you notice? Because some people just simply don't want to admit to being the financial backing for an anthropomorphized anorak, which is what I am. And you can hear more of my ramblings at patreon.com/Toby Hadoke, where for as little as £3 a month, but you needn't limit yourself to that. You could go up to £1 million a month if you like, and you'd still get a 10% discount if you signed up for a year. So you'd get 10% off the 12 million quid you gave me in a dab. If you did that, I might run away, and you might. The world may never hear me being cheerful about the mutants, because frankly, I'll be sipping pina coladas off a monoid's back. In some paradise island. Sorry about that. But you know, if you're the person that's given me the 12 million quid, you can come. You could probably go on your own and not need me, and you've probably got your own monoids anyway. What am I talking about? Patreon. I'm sure I started a sentence that has run away with me. The long and the short of it is patreon.com/Toby Hadoke is where there are advance releases, bonus material, and a few little back and forths between us as well, and other little trinkets are available on Patreon. You know how it works. If patrons get other things, but it's a fairly egalitarian system. So the person that pays £3 a month gets pretty much the same as the person that gives me £1 million a month. There isn't. That person isn't. There's not that person. But if they were, I'm afraid they get a few more things than the £3 a month person, but nothing that's really a deal breaker. I think everything is available pretty much at the lowest tier bar just a couple of little trivial trinkets, because has to be some sort of carrot. And I'm a carrot, not a stick kind of guy. Let's not get into that. You only find out those details if you give me £1 million a month. Was it £1 million a month I'm after? Yeah, that's all. So listen, or look, if you don't want to do the Patreon thing, if you don't want to, be obliged to pay £1 million every month, you can just give me £1 million on Ko-fi.com/Toby Hadoke. You just throw me £1 million, and I don't have to know anything. So however you want to give me your £1 million, please feel free. But if you don't have £1 million or less than £1 million, but would still like to support without any financial outlay, which is completely understandable. I know that times are tough, and that we don't expect to pay for podcasts or be paid for them, so that's fine. But what costs you nothing? 0% of £1 million is to go to iTunes or Patreon. No, not at Patreon. iTunes. Don't go to Patreon unless you've got £1 million. Or no, yeah. Anyway, you can go to iTunes. If you've got no money, don't go to Patreon. Go to iTunes, and not if you've got no money, but if you've just got no money that you want to give me, which, as I've established, is fine. Just as fine as if you've got £1 million and you want to give it to me. What the hell am I talking about today? So listen, this is the longest advert that everyone has died during the running of this attempt to get you to either give me £1 million or gradations thereof, or if there's no money involved, you can go to iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts and rate these 5 stars. Don't knock a star off for the post-credit stuff. This doesn't count. And also a few lines of review. That helps to tickle my algorithms and make them all sexy. And podcasts with sexy algorithms get more people downloading it and listening to them. And then it justifies me essentially doing what I'm doing now, which is sitting in a cupboard and talking rubbish at midnight. Just for you. I know, aren't you lucky? I think that's worth £1 million. And look, I'm also a stand-up comedian, and, I've been doing it for 25 years, and I've won a few awards. I'm not good enough to have earned £1 million yet. However, I do run a critically acclaimed comedy club that's been going for 25 years in Manchester called Excess Malarkey. An X, an S, and the word Malarkey. It has a website, excessmalarkey.com. It's on Twitter at Excess Malarkey. The live show is every Tuesday at 8 p.m. at the Bread Shed in Manchester, but we have an online version on the first Sunday of every month, 8 p.m, twitch.tv/Excess Malarkey. And that's just, you can see me twanging one of the other strings to my bow. But, if you like the sort of stuff I do involving Doctor Who, you might like the stuff I do that doesn't involve Doctor Who at all, although it sometimes does involve Doctor Who, because I sort of have a rare form of Tourette's where I sort of seem to have to mention Doctor Who, whatever I'm talking about. And tonight, Doctor Who and £1 million, which are two of my favourite things. So, yeah, come and join us at XS Malarkey. That, actually, the online version, twitch.tv/XS Malarkey, is free at the point of entry. We encourage donations, but there's no obligation. And again, you can donate what you want, from £1 to £1 million. Right. Thanks. If I had £1 million for every time I said £1 million during this podcast, I would never need to say £1 million again. I'm never going to know what £1 million looks like, am I? But imagine. I would still wouldn't be any happier. I'd probably, actually, deep down, be happier if one episode of The Mythmakers came back than if you gave me £1 million. Would I? Actually, now, that would be a test of my mettle. If I was on the table, then the devil was there. I don't know why it's the devil. The devil has got £1 million, and he's got episode 2 of The Mythmakers. Oh. A single episode's tricky. If we're talking double figures of episodes and £1 million, then half the missing episodes and £1 million, then we might be talking. If it was all the missing episodes or £1 million, I'd take them. I'd have the complete. Would I? Yes. Yes, I would. Test me. If you are out there and you have £1 million and all the missing episodes of Doctor Who, let's talk. I think there's something wrong with me.